Well, Richard, I got to start with the NFL. Monday, obviously, a terrible day at NFL headquarters in Manhattan after the shooting that left 4 people dead and 1 NFL employee seriously injured. We are certainly thinking about those impacted by this tragic event.
Yeah, listen, I lived in New York for 19, 20 years. I live in Toronto now, but I still consider New York my home. And so to see that is incredibly heartbreaking. And I think I speak for all New Yorkers. I know Mollie's one. My heart goes out to everybody who's been impacted by that. Certainly the policeman who was killed. It's awful. In terms of our world, at this point, the reporting suggests, at least via the police, that a suicide note was found where the person was targeting the NFL in terms of heading into that building. And at least one of my thoughts in terms of, when you're thinking about sort of the NFL business side, Austin and Mollie, is, well, how does that start impacting like the business of the league? Do they need more security? Will the investigation show that this is sort of just a, one-time event and someone who sort of is more of a lone wolf? Or is there any existing evidence that, NFL will have to sort of tighten up things? It's not something, at least in my recollection, that I could remember during the course of like at least my professional career, Austin and Mollie, where somebody targeted a league. It's sort of like the target was conceptual as opposed to a singular individual, at least in terms of what the reporting suggests today. I'm going to be really interested to see how Roger Goodell and the executives in the league handle it. I'll certainly be interested to see how those who cover the NFL cover this story. But I mean, just pretty awful. And quite frankly, again, the reporting suggests that, had the person actually found a different floor, we could be having a very, very different discussion when it comes to the NFL.
Absolutely, Richard. And like you said, our thoughts and prayers are obviously with everyone involved with that situation. But I want to continue around the business of the NFL. A lot of news going on with the players' union in this case, change in leadership there. As the Eagles' Lane Johnson called it. He called the union a shit show right now. So we're going to have to get a new NFLPA leader out there. But it's going to have a pretty big impact on a lot of things that the NFL wants to get done, particularly on the media side. We're talking about adding a game to the schedule, getting the 18, adding more international games. How much do you think this new leader is going to have an appetite to get that sort of thing done with Roger Goodell and company?
Well, Austin, listen, you asked a really good question and the important question, because the Players Association has some significant things in front of them. That 18-game thing is massive. It changes basically potential salary, right? It changes, at least when the league does its examination of potential injuries in the league. So the players are going to have to sign off on one additional game, which really, I feel like the NFL's really pushed it already at 16 or 17. You had an 18th game. I wonder if the Players Association will fight for some kind of agreement with the league where maybe, a player can take a bye during a week or something like that, just in terms of the collective bargaining. And then the international stuff, it's the same thing. This is additional travel. This changes the course of an NFL player's schedule. You have to play away from your comfort zone, whether you're playing in Germany or England or Spain or Brazil has a game this year. So the NFLPA has some really, really significant issues that it has to negotiate with the league. And I think just for the players, my hope is just that they settle on the right person. I mean, it would seem to me, I think you have to find somebody who's certainly removed from previous leadership. And then secondly, like, they have to have the players' best interests at heart.
Yeah.
Because to me, we're getting to a point now, especially with 18 games, where I think like safety and health comes in. I get like you can cut the exhibition schedule to, 1 or 2 games at the most, but we're not this is not basketball or baseball. This is a physical, violent sport. And I feel like the human body can only take so much in that sport. So I am not in favor of 18 games. But for the sake of this podcast, I certainly understand why the league is, and I certainly understand why media partners are. If you add that extra game, and you and Mollie know this, you are now bringing in streamers into the equation where you may be able to carve out yet another package where they will pay a boatload, whether that's the international package or you just figure out another special game where like a Netflix or an Amazon Prime decides to just go big money for that. So I get why the league wants it, but I am... just as a sort of on a humanity end, I am very, very worried a little bit in terms of player health when it comes to that extra game.
Well, sticking with the media side of it, you're chasing it, Alex Sherman's chasing it, I'm chasing it, Ben Fisher's chasing it. This potential sale of NFL media to ESPN, even potentially before ESPN D2C launches. What are you hearing on this?
Yeah, I would say, to be more accurate, my colleague Andrew Marchand is chasing it much more than I am. I've heard the same thing that everybody else is. The ESPN is not. They're not going to acquire all of NFL media, but some of those assets. But the assets that they end up acquiring are really, really potentially interesting, right? Because if they do get, let's say, Red Zone and they do get NFL Network, well, that to me game changes a lot of their value set. It gives them a very, very interesting bit of properties when it comes to their DTC. It gives them certainly the potential of more inventory when it comes to games, and that is massive for ESPN. What ESPN to me now has, the Stephen A. Smiths and Pat McAfees, they get a lot of attention, and that's sort of like where a lot of the attention economy exists. But ultimately what ESPN about is their game inventory. That is their sell to the public. They have the sell, and I think it is accurate, that they have the best portfolio of rights when you add all the different rights that they have. NFL, NBA, NHL, UFC and MLB right now, WNBA, all the college football. I mean, I can go on. NCAA Women's Basketball Championships, soccer stuff. It's a lot. And that's a really good value proposition to bring to market when it comes to, hey, we want you to pay $30 for our DTC, or hey, we want you to pay whatever dollars exist for whatever your package is in terms of how you get ESPN. So I think NFL Network and NFL Red Zone would make them actually that much more attractive when it comes to the market. My sense is it will get done because I think there is value for both the NFL and ESPN to be partners here. The real question, and by the way, I have no new reporting on this, I don't know what the percentage stake would be, and I think that's really obviously going to be massively important when it comes to both sides. And then I'd be real curious in terms of what assets they ultimately land in terms of they control versus what the partnership is. And then lastly, I mean, we're talking sort of a little bit long term, but I wonder what the impact is on sort of NFL investigations and journalism when it comes to ESPN. I'm not going to go sort of full blanket and say they're not going to cover the NFL because that's silly. Look how many people they employ, even in terms of singular teams. But once you're partners with somebody like this kind of partnership level, it does make a difference because I feel like you might hear from your partner more if you're going down in terms of the third rail stuff, concussions.
Pretty much anything Don Van Natta is going to write about.
Well, we'll see. Yeah, CTE. Although I think, Van Natta is an incredible reporter and he'll continue what he does. You might not be as aggressive on some stories because you are partners with them. It's not necessarily like they'll call you and say, hey, don't do this. It's more that because you have a partnership, you may just not go down this road to start with.
Yeah, you would absolutely need separation of church and state between it in order to continue doing ethical journalism and accurate reporting. It needs to stay separate, and that's a really good point.
I do want to give a shout out to Alex Sherman had some really good details on that percentage you were talking about was 10%. He did say it was kind of a moving target, but yeah, what percentage they own is still going to be up in the air, and it does create a very unique situation potentially.
I concur on the shout out. I think he's done really good reporting. Marchand's done good reporting. And John Oran at Puck has done some interesting stuff. It's a significant story because, as all of your listeners know, there really is one major content area in the United States, and that's in the NFL. And then everything else is 1A, 1B, 2, 3, 4. So this is a significant major potential play where one of the biggest media organizations ends up in a real financial stake partnership with, I would argue, the most important, not only the most important, but the content area that more Americans care about than any other content area.
And I think it's also indicative of where ESPN is heading, especially with this D2C product. We're starting to see their strategy shore up, and it's NFL and NBA. It's those two big properties. And a couple analysts I was talking to, just getting a sense of everything, they kind of wonder what is going to happen with some of those tertiary rights. And I know we're going to talk about this a little later, but that's F1, UFC, some of the smaller rights that don't have the just the cultural impact of the NFL.
Don't tell that to UFC. They don't want to hear that right now.
Dana White, don't listen. I wrote about this a little bit Monday. His NFL draft is up with ESPN, and that's not part of these conversations. But a source told me a couple months ago at this point that they fully expect that deal to get done and the draft to stay at ESPN for the foreseeable future.
I would be stunned in the near term if ESPN doesn't continue to hold the NFL draft in some form. I think if you're thinking about it in terms of the NFL, you would be giving up not just the night of the draft, but you would be giving up the company that puts out the most content, maybe outside of NFL.com, puts out the most content from the end of the Super Bowl until the draft in terms of like draft combine, flash, however you want to do it, projection coverage. So to take them out of it, I think, again, it's not that the NFL couldn't survive anything, but I just think it would be bad business to not have them involved in it. The question would be, if you're the NFL or an ESPN, is would you be willing to share that with, let's say, a streamer? Let's say Amazon Prime would be interested in putting the NFL on, and they'd be interested in using like literally ESPN simulcast to put on their airwaves just to give their subscribers like something unique and something different. Obviously, ESPN would have to sign off on that. So the question to me would be, I think the NFL would like more people involved in the draft. Like that makes sense to me. But I don't think you can take away your primary principal distributor of the draft content for however many years they've done it.
But I don't think ESPN was very happy. What was it, a couple of years ago? They tried this. They tried bringing on Fox just for the first round. And I think ESPN was like, we don't want any of that because you're splitting it then between ABC, ESPN with a simulcast on whichever network had it there, Fox, NFL Network. Maybe that's a little too many chefs in the kitchen for the first round.
ESPN's objectives and the NFL objectives are not the same, right? Correct?
They're about to potentially be aligned, though, a little more.
In some ways, yes. But ultimately, ESPN would desire exclusivity for everything, right? I mean, they would never want to share properties.
You pay for that. That's how you solve that, is you pay for it.
Right. What I'm saying, if you ask Jimmy Pitaro, Burke Magnus, hey, we'll give you all of the NFL inventory, what would they say? They'd be dancing the streets of Bristol. But the point is, like, that's not going to happen. So what I'm saying is, like, I think ESPN should still, in my opinion, for both parties, be the primary broadcaster of the draft. But I think if you're the NFL, I think you'd be smart to bring in another party. Traditionally, that other party has been the NFL Network. Now, what really gets interesting, Austin and Mollie, is, well, the NFL Network is under the ESPN aegis and umbrella. What does that mean? This is pure guesswork on my part, but if that does come to fruition, I think ESPN continues the NFL Network draft coverage. I think it's a separate product within the ESPN universe. And again, I could see it ABC doing the draft, ESPN doing the draft, and the NFL Network doing the draft. ESPN sells against all the stuff, and you roll up all the numbers because you own everything. But I think on a business level, I think ESPN would be smart to get a Netflix or an Amazon Prime or an Apple involved in the NFL draft because it is an event. It is a one-off. And those streamers have shown you significant interest in eventizing all of this stuff. And one night or two night stuff can be eventized. It's a much different proposition where it's like, okay, Netflix, you're going to take the NBA package, right? And you're going to do 100 games. Like, they're not in a position yet to do that. But if you're talking about first round of the draft, in particular, one night, any of those streamers, I think, would be interested. I think it's good content.
Well, and a streaming partner would be different than a broadcast partner, right? Those are just inherently different audiences. One's younger, one is your more traditional demo. So a Fox would cannibalize an ESPN or an ABC broadcast in a way that a streamer wouldn't.
I don't remember the demos. Maybe Austin does. But it would be interesting to see the average age when Fox had that draft versus ESPN's average age, because I think you're right. I bet you it'd be the same. If an Amazon Prime got it, I think you would drop streamers. It's actually always fun to make fun of the Amazon Prime PR people because you can't get through a press release without seeing the average age of their NFL broadcast.
The median age dropping by 7. We see it with Thursday Night Football. We saw it with NASCAR. It drops by around 7 years.
The average age is not 27. Like, let's, we're not talking the TikTok crowds.
We're talking about it's still in the 50s.
Right. But I think there is a difference between average age 58, average age 50. Because if you're talking the averages, you're then bringing in people from under 50, so you 40s, late 30s, and something like that. So it is a little bit of a younger audience, and for all these leagues, like, that is the lifeblood of their future. You have to try to figure out ways to get younger people to watch your product, particularly because younger people don't subscribe to cable television. They're barely ever looking at linear television. You have to figure out ways to to show your product to a generation that didn't grow up, Austin, like me or you. Obviously, Mollie, you're much younger than us. You're a little bit different.
And here I thought it was a younger NFL viewer. Richard, you're taking away my thunder.
You might still hit the median age. But anyway, I don't think we're going to be seeing the NFL on TikTok anytime soon, but never say never.
Austin, I think Rich would just call you old.
Well, if I'm calling Austin old, then I'm calling myself old, so you should not take that poorly.
But speaking of Ellison, Skydance, Paramount merger, we've closed it. We've been talking about it for years. It's done. What do you see as the impact that merger could have on CBS media rights?
I mean, I think if you're CBS Sports, I think you're probably psyched because to me, this deal symbols, I think, that company being more aggressive on sports rights heading forward. I think they know in terms of that business that sports is an interesting proposition and that they can sell against it. To predict what the NFL will do whenever they opt out, I think is, foolish at this point, but I think it probably gives CBS a little bit of a better place to be because that is now settled, right? Like the business, at least we know who the parent company is now. And if you're the NFL, the one thing you don't want, obviously, is you don't want disruption in terms of corporate ownership. So I would think it makes CBS a more likely partner for the NFL heading forward. And I would say just that, CBS got a nice set of rights, but if I had to guess, I think they add. Now, I couldn't tell you what they're going to add at the moment. You'd have to go down the list of sports rights that exist. One of the big ones is obviously World Cup coming up. I know Fox still wants that as well.
The CBS is no stranger to soccer. They have some major rights there on that.
It's an interesting play for CBS because of Paramount Plus. They've gotten a lot of acclaim for their coverage of Champions League. They've become, I think, a place where soccer fans look at them as like a real place where you can watch international soccer on a high level. So that's kind of interesting. CBS is, I think, pretty settled in college football now with the Big Ten. And obviously with the March Madness package when it comes to basketball. So I think if I had to guess, I think if you're David Burson, I think you're psyched. And I think you're probably going to have more runway to maybe expand your portfolio. I couldn't tell you what Paramount Plus is going to be long term. I mean, again, I think all of us have said this for a long time. I just think consolidation in that space is absolutely going to happen. It's really just going to be a question of when. There's going to be a couple of winners. I mean, I think already Netflix is a winner. Like that sort of goes without saying. I think Disney Plus is sort of already a winner, and I imagine Amazon Prime is a winner. If anybody, maybe Peacock gets in, I don't know. It was certainly not a great moment for journalism or editorial or 60 Minutes, but I think if you're from the David Burson CBS Sports end, I think you're coming out of that actually in a really much better place, at least from my perspective.
But to your point, Richard, just about CBS Sports, like they've been operating, they've been doing their thing, but there was always a question. It was above CBS Sports. It was like, what is the future of Paramount and CBS if this deal didn't go through? Now they have Skydance money, which means Oracle money. Let's just call this what it is. His father, Larry Ellison, is 80 years old. David Ellison, the head of Skydance, he's going to have that Oracle money behind him. So that makes Paramount and CBS, like you said, they're going to be a major player out there for rights. This deal gets done a couple of years ago. Maybe we're not talking about the SEC leaving CBS and them losing a big package of college football rights there. Who knows?
This will be a little bit of a test here, is when you talk to David Burson or you talk to, let's say, Mike Mulvihill at Fox or the NBC people like Rick Cordella, they will always tell you the power of linear reach, right? Like that is what they continue to pitch. Like even in 2025, it makes a difference to be on a network versus elsewhere. Probably the Euros, the women's Euros are a great example in real time of this. What the merger here will show us, I think, is like, okay, because CBS Sports' sort of dominant place in the marketplace is still linear television, right? It's not Paramount Plus, with all respect to Paramount Plus. So I think this is going to really tell us something about at least whatever rights come up, like how much power like an over-the-air network, linear network has in 2027, 2028. All the stats say, and they're correct, obviously I don't think Nielsen is incorrect here, that more people are watching streaming, the numbers go down. But just because the numbers are going down doesn't necessarily still mean that there's not strength in whatever numbers are left on the other side. So that's just going to be interesting to me to sort of watch. And I think CBS Sports is they'll be a really good indicator of whatever rights are coming up over the next, let's say, 3 to 5 years, what some of these leagues are thinking about in terms of, do they think the power of like over-the-air television still exists? And obviously, far and away, the real indicator will be whenever the NFL rights are up. Because the NFL, I feel like, historically, because they're the biggest sport in the country, generally speaking, other places tend to follow what they do. That sort of makes sense. They set the market trend. And so there's your real big indicator, but we don't get that indicator until the first of the opt-outs happen closer to the end of
2029. Yeah.